This coin almost ended up in a pocket full of loose change, but today it's valued at over $1 million. Imagine holding something so ordinary, yet so rare, that it could change your entire life in an instant. That's the chilling mystery of the 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks just like every other penny you've ever seen. Copper-colored, worn edges, Lincoln's familiar profile staring to the right. Most people would toss it in a jar without a second thought. But collectors know, beneath its humble surface lies one of the most shocking stories in coin history. The year was 1978. The U.S. Mint was producing billions of Lincoln Memorial pennies. Denver struck theirs with a bold D mark. San Francisco used its S. But Philadelphia, the birthplace of American coinage, struck pennies with no mint mark at all. Ordinary, right? Not this time. Hidden among those billions of strikes, a small number emerged with mysterious flaws, off-metal strikes, and microscopic details so rare that dealers and collectors were stunned. One coin, plucked out of circulation decades later, ended up at an auction block. When the hammer fell, it sold for a staggering sum, enough to buy a house outright. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world, because the story didn't end there. More of these 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln pennies began surfacing, each with peculiar features. Some showed unusual doubling on Lincoln's profile. Others had die cracks that looked like lightning bolts slashing across the memorial. And then there were the off-metal strikes, pennies that weren't even struck on copper but on leftover dime planchets. These weren't just oddities. They were miracles of chance. Collectors whispered about them. Dealers searched furiously. And the value skyrocketed. A coin that most people thought was worth just 1 cent was now commanding 6 figures. In one case, an extraordinary specimen fetched nearly $1.8 million. A single penny worth more than gold, more than diamonds, more than anyone could have imagined. What made this coin so desirable, so untouchable? The answer lies in the minting process itself. Mistakes at the mint are like accidents of fate, they aren't supposed to happen. Every die, every strike, every planchet is designed to be flawless. But in 1978, tiny errors slipped through unnoticed. And those errors transformed a common coin into an artifact of history. Think about that for a moment. Billions of pennies rolled off those presses. And yet only a handful contained the secrets that would stun the coin world decades later. The odds of finding one in circulation are so slim it feels impossible. And yet, time and time again, stories surface of ordinary people pulling life-changing coins from pocket change. One man discovered his coin stuck to the bottom of a soda machine. Another found his in an old coffee can in the garage. Their discoveries turned into headlines, their pennies into fortunes, but here's where it gets even more thrilling. Many people don't even know what to look for. They hold the coin in their hand and think it's just another penny. They spend it at the gas station, drop it in a tip jar, or leave it behind in the couch cushions. And every time that happens, the chance for $1 million discovery slips away unnoticed, and that's why you need to know the secrets of the 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. Because without this knowledge, the treasure could slip right through your fingers. First, check the mint mark. Or rather, the lack of one. A 1978 penny with no mint mark means it was struck in Philadelphia. But not every Philadelphia penny is valuable. What makes it rare is when it carries hidden errors. Look closely at Lincoln's profile. On some coins, doubling can be seen around his eye, his chin, or his hair. Under magnification, this doubling looks like a shadow, an eerie ghost of the original design. That doubling alone can turn a penny into a collector's dream. Next, flip the coin over. Inspect the Lincoln Memorial. Do you see cracks running through the design, almost like veins in marble? Those are die cracks, mistakes that occurred during the striking process. The bigger, bolder, and stranger the crack, the more valuable the coin. Collectors pay astonishing sums for dramatic examples, but the holy grail lies in off-metal errors. A 1978 penny struck on a dime planchet is smaller, thinner, and often has missing design details near the rim. These coins are breathtakingly rare. When one surfaces, the bidding wars begin. And that's where prices soar into the hundreds of thousands, and in some cases, into million-dollar territory. And now imagine this. You've got a jar of pennies in your kitchen. dusty, forgotten, maybe filled with coins from the 70s. You reach in, pull one out, and there it is, a 1978 no-mint mark penny. At first, it looks like nothing. But under the light, you see a glimmer of doubling. Your heart races. Could it be? Could this be the one? The same coin others have sold for life-changing sums? That moment, the chance, is what keeps collectors searching day and night, and the truth is, these treasures are still out there. The U.S. Mint struck over 5 billion pennies in 1978. Many have been lost, destroyed, or forgotten. But others remain tucked away in jars, drawers, and collections that haven't seen the light of day in decades. Somewhere, sitting quietly in the dark, is a penny that could be worth more than $1 million. Collectors know this. Dealers know this. That's why the hunt never stops. Because the discovery of a single coin can rewrite someone's destiny. It can transform pocket change into a fortune. It can turn an ordinary moment, a casual glance at a coin, into the most extraordinary event of your life. So tonight, when you empty your pockets, look closely. Tomorrow, when you sort through old jars of coins, pay attention. And if you find a 1978 penny without a mint mark, don't dismiss it. Examine it carefully. Because the tiny copper coin could be hiding a secret worth $1.8 million, and when you find it, remember this moment. Remember that you heard the story, you learned the truth, and you took the time to look. Because the next $1 million discovery won't come from chance alone. It will come from the eyes of those who know what to see. Of the 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, rare, mysterious, and unforgettable. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up forgotten, tossed aside as just another penny, but when it surfaced at auction, it stunned collectors and sold for nearly $2 million. It's a 1982 Lincoln penny, a coin millions of people have seen, but almost no one realizes could be hiding a secret worth up to $1.90 million. Think about that for a moment. A coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk could be worth more than a luxury home. Why is one ordinary-looking penny turning the coin world upside down? And more importantly, could you have one sitting in your pocket right now? The year was 1982. The U.S. Mint was in the middle of a major change. For decades, pennies had been made mostly of copper. But copper prices were rising, and the mint decided to switch to a cheaper metal, zinc, coated with a thin layer of copper. This change created chaos. Some pennies were struck in copper, others in zinc. Some carried a small D mint mark for Denver, others had no mint mark at all. And somewhere in this storm of transition, mistakes slipped through. One mistake created the 1982 D penny that could change your life. There isn't just one type of 1982 penny. There are 7 different varieties: copper, zinc, large date, small date, with or without mint marks. Most are worth only a cent. A few are worth a few dollars. And then, there's the holy grail. A single 1982 D penny struck in the wrong metal, the wrong way, that today commands up to $1.9 million at auction. Collectors were shocked when this discovery first surfaced. Imagine thinking you've seen every kind of Lincoln cent, only for one coin to rewrite history, and yet, it happened. A coin dealer, sorting through what should have been ordinary pennies, suddenly realized one felt heavier in the hand. He weighed it, and the numbers didn't make sense. This wasn't zinc. This was copper. A Denver minted penny, from 1982, in copper, when every official record said it shouldn't exist. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. The coin was sent to experts. Under magnification, it revealed its truth. The D mint mark was clear. The weight matched copper. And when the hammer fell at auction, collectors fought furiously, pushing the price to the kind of money people only dream of, nearly $2 million. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. No one knows exactly how many of these 1982 D copper pennies are still out there. Could there be one sitting in a jar of coins in your kitchen? Could there be one rattling around in your glove compartment, ignored for decades? Dealers are rushing to get their hands on any 1982 penny, hoping to find one of these rare treasures. Entire collections are being re-examined. People are digging through old rolls of coins, desperate for the chance of striking gold, or in this case, copper. But here's what most people miss: the tiny details that separate a penny worth 1 cent from a penny worth $1.90 million. The date matters. The mint mark matters. But most of all, the weight matters. A zinc penny weighs just 2.5 grams. A copper penny weighs 3.1 grams. That difference may sound small, but it could mean the difference between pocket change and a life-changing fortune. Imagine holding a coin in your hand, feeling its weight, and realizing you're holding a piece of history worth more than $1 million, but it's not just about weight. In 1982, the Mint experimented with large and small date designs. To the untrained eye, they look the same. But look closely, the curves of the numbers, the shape of the two, the height of the date, these subtle differences tell the story. Collectors who know how to spot them are ahead of the game. Collectors who don't, walk right past a fortune, and here's where it gets even more mysterious. Some experts believe more 1982 D copper pennies were struck by accident and are still hiding in circulation. Every year, new discoveries shake the coin world. Just when collectors think all the treasures have been found, another one surfaces. Would you sell it immediately and cash in? Or would you hold on to it, knowing that its value could rise even higher as collectors battle to own the rarest Lincoln penny of all time? This isn't just a coin. It's a story of survival. A mistake that slipped past inspectors. A secret that sat unnoticed for decades. A treasure waiting for the right pair of eyes, and tonight, as you listen to this story, that treasure could be sitting closer than you think, because the truth is simple: most people never check their change. Most people never weigh their coins. Most people never realize what's hiding in plain sight, but now you know to look at every 1982 penny with a D mint mark. You know to check the weight. 3.1 grams means copper, and copper means the impossible. You know to study the date, to look for those subtle details that can change everything, and if you find one, you'll join the tiny group of people who have turned a single penny into a story worth telling for generations. Collectors will whisper your name. Dealers will chase your coin. And the world will know that the greatest treasures don't always glitter. Sometimes, they're hiding in plain copper. So the next time you reach into your pocket and feel that familiar round shape, don't dismiss it. Don't toss it into a jar without looking. Hold it up. Study it. Weigh it. Because that little coin could be the one. The 1982 D Lincoln penny, worth up to $1.9 million. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up in a coffee can, buried in a basement, forgotten for decades, but when it resurfaced, it shocked the entire coin world by being valued at nearly $1 million, the 1963 D Lincoln penny. A coin so common, so ordinary in appearance, that most people would never give it a second glance. Yet hidden within a few rare examples lies a minting mystery that transformed ordinary pocket change into life-changing treasure. Collectors whisper about it. Dealers hunt for it. And one man's casual discovery nearly rewrote coin history. But how could a penny minted in Denver in 1963, a year when billions were struck, possibly be worth up to $1 million? The answer is in the details. Back in 1963, America was on the edge of a new era. Kennedy was president. The space race was in full swing. And the Denver Mint was working at full capacity, striking billions of Lincoln Memorial cents. These coins were meant to be plentiful, everyday tokens of commerce. But in the chaos of high production, something unexpected happened. A small number of 1963 D pennies were struck with microscopic irregularities. Doubled dies. Off-center strikes. Planchet errors. At first glance, they look like every other penny, but under closer inspection, the mistakes are breathtaking. Collectors were stunned when one surfaced at auction, its doubling on the obverse so sharp, so undeniable, that bidding went through the roof. A coin that could have been spent on a stick of gum sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And whispers began, could there be more out there? But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Another 1963 D surfaced, this time with a striking off-metal error. Instead of being struck on the usual copper planchet, it had been mistakenly struck on a silver-colored blank intended for a dime. That one error made this single penny worth a fortune. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on it. Stories spread like wildfire. Suddenly, the most ordinary year of the Lincoln penny wasn't so ordinary anymore. Someone empties their pocket change into a jar, unaware that a life-changing coin sits among the pile. For decades, it rests unnoticed, until finally, a sharp-eyed collector picks it up, studies the details, and realizes the truth. That single moment could turn forgotten change into a $1 million miracle, and it has happened. 1 1963 D penny, preserved in near pristine condition, with a flawless strike and blazing red luster, sold for a jaw-dropping price that left even veteran collectors speechless. The rarity wasn't just in its minting mistake, but in its survival. Most pennies from this year were spent, worn down, scratched, or discarded. But this one gleamed as if it had just left the press. That's why it commanded such an extraordinary price. Millions of these pennies are still out there, sitting in drawers, tucked in shoeboxes, hidden in jars of change. And most people don't even know it. Think about that. Somewhere, maybe even in your home, could be a coin that looks like a penny, but is actually worth $1 million. Collectors call this the silent treasure. A coin that hides in plain sight. First, look closely at the date. Some rare 1963 D pennies show doubling on the numbers, especially on the 3. Under magnification, the numbers appear to have shadows, 2 impressions instead of 1. That's a double die, and collectors will pay huge sums for it. Second, examine the mint mark. On a few rare examples, the D is repunched, meaning the die struck it twice in slightly different positions. To most people, it looks like a smudge. To collectors, it's a golden ticket. Third, check the metal itself. Some 1963 D pennies were accidentally struck on foreign planchets or dime blanks. If the coin looks silvery, weighs differently, or feels unusual, you may have stumbled on one of the rarest errors in American coinage. And finally, condition matters. A circulated penny with heavy wear won't command record-breaking prices. But a mint state, blazing red 1963 D with a dramatic error? That's where the $1 million miracles happen. But what makes this story so unbelievable is that these coins weren't supposed to exist. The mint had strict quality controls. Mistakes like this were meant to be caught, melted down, destroyed before they ever reached the public. Yet somehow, against all odds, a few slipped through. And those few have become legendary. Collectors were shocked. Dealers scrambled. And suddenly, the humble 1963 D penny was no longer just change, it was a symbol of hidden fortune. But here's where it gets even more dramatic. At a major coin show, a man walked in with a small envelope of coins he had saved since childhood. Inside was a 1963 D penny. Dealers glanced at it, then froze. The doubling was unmistakable. The color was pristine. They knew instantly what they were holding. Bidding wars erupted before the coin even hit the auction block. That coin went on to fetch a life-changing sum, nearly $1 million, and that's why collectors today are obsessed with checking every 1963 D penny they find. Because while most are worth a cent, a handful are priceless. Start looking. Pull out your jars of change. Open the drawers. Check those rolls of pennies that have been sitting untouched for decades. Because in one of them could be the coin that changes everything. Look for doubling on the date. Watch the D mint mark for signs of repunching. Weigh the coin if you suspect an off-metal strike. And above all, look for condition. The redder, the sharper, the better. This is not just a story about a coin. It's a story about hidden wealth, about miracles hiding in plain sight. It's proof that even the most ordinary object can hold extraordinary value. And as you listen to this, somewhere in America, a 1963 D Lincoln penny worth over $1 million is waiting to be found. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up in a grocery store register, but instead, it turned into a $1 million miracle. Yes, a simple 1996 D mint mark Lincoln penny, the kind you've probably handled without thinking twice, has sold for staggering amounts, with some rare examples worth up to $1.1 million. How could a coin struck just a few decades ago, one that was meant to be ordinary pocket change, rise to become one of the most coveted treasures in the coin world? The story of the 1996 D penny is not one of ordinary value, it's one of shocking mistakes, hidden details, and life-changing discoveries, because buried in the Denver Mint's production that year was a mystery that nobody saw coming. Thousands, even millions of coins were struck in 1996. Most slipped into circulation unnoticed. People spent them, dropped them in parking lots, tossed them into jars, or left them to rust in drawers. But a handful, a tiny fraction, were different, and that difference turned them into gold mines. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. One collector in Colorado claimed he pulled a 1996 D penny straight from pocket change, only to realize under a magnifying glass that something was wrong. The strike wasn't normal. The lettering seemed doubled, faintly ghosted, almost whispering a secret from the metal itself. He thought maybe it was worthless. Maybe just damage. But he trusted his gut and sent it for grading. Weeks later, the call came back. His jaw dropped. The coin wasn't damaged. It was a rare minting error, one that could change his life forever. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were scrambling. And suddenly, the once ignored 1996 penny was making headlines. But here's the thing most people don't realize: this coin hides in plain sight. That same year, the Denver Mint used multiple dies, and some were flawed. Some struck pennies with doubled designs. Others produced coins with off-center strikes so dramatic they look like accidents frozen in time. A few even left behind mysterious die cracks, tiny raised lines across Lincoln's face, the memorial, or the date. And here's the chilling truth: most people who saw these coins never recognized what they had. They spent them like pocket change, unaware they were letting go of a fortune. Condition, rarity, and the smallest details most eyes overlook, because in the world of coin collecting, details are everything. 1996 penny with an extraordinary error, struck on the wrong planchet, shocked the auction world by selling for hundreds of thousands. Another in pristine, uncirculated condition, shimmering with luster like it just left the press, fetched a jaw-dropping figure that pushed it toward the $1 million mark. And here's the part that leaves collectors speechless: it's not just one lucky person who found such a treasure. Stories keep surfacing. A coin dealer in Texas revealed he bought a bag of 1996 pennies for face value, only to discover one misstruck coin hiding among them, later selling for enough money to buy a brand new car. Another collector spotted the tiniest doubling on the date, had it authenticated, and watched the bidding war explode in front of his eyes. But what makes the 1996 penny so dangerous to overlook is how ordinary it seems. Think about it. How many times have you seen that shiny D mint mark below the date and shrugged it off? How many times have you let it slide through your fingers without giving it a second glance? That exact penny could have been your $1 million ticket. But wait, it gets even stranger. Some experts believe certain dies at the Denver Mint in 1996 were misaligned in a way that wasn't caught until it was too late. That means more of these error coins might still be out there, unrecognized, sitting quietly in coin jars, forgotten in piggy banks, or resting in dusty dresser drawers. And this is where collectors' blood runs cold, because every time someone digs through their old change, there's a chance they could stumble upon one. Imagine the moment. You open a coin roll, expecting nothing. You pour the pennies onto your table. They clink and scatter. And then you see it, a 1996 penny that looks just a little off. The letters don't line up quite right. Lincoln's bust looks doubled, ghostly. Or maybe the coin is struck so far off center it seems impossible it ever left the mint. Could you be holding a coin worth hundreds of thousands, maybe even over $1 million? That exact scenario has already changed lives. Collectors have turned simple pennies into down payments on houses. Others have used them to pay off debts, to retire early, to secure a future they never thought possible. All from a coin most people would overlook. And yet, the hunt continues, because the 1996 penny is not just about money. It's about possibility. It's about hope. It's about the thrill of finding something extraordinary where nobody else thought to look. Dealers know it. Collectors know it. And now, you know it too. Start with the mint mark. You're looking for the small d just below the date 1996. Next, study the coin under a magnifying glass. Look closely at the date, the words "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." If you see doubling, faint, shadow-like repeats of the letters, you may have a doubled die error. Check the alignment. If Lincoln's face or the memorial on the reverse seems shifted, tilted, or off-center, you could be staring at a valuable misstrike. Inspect the coin's surface. Raised lines, cracks, or unusual bumps may be die breaks, and collectors prize them. And finally, condition is king. If your coin still shines with mint luster, without scratches or wear, the value skyrockets. Many people mistake ordinary damage for true mint errors. A scratched coin, a coin run over by a car, or one corroded in the ground is just damage and worth a penny. The key is authenticity. Always get it graded and authenticated by a trusted service before assuming you've struck gold, because the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth over $1 million is knowing what you're looking for. So the next time you hold a 1996 penny in your hand, don't dismiss it. Don't spend it without a second look, because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up in someone's change jar, but instead, it sold for nearly $1 million. Yes, you heard that right. A simple 1968 D Lincoln penny, the kind you've probably seen thousands of times, turned out to be one of the rarest and most valuable coins ever discovered. Why would a penny struck in the late 1960s suddenly shake the entire coin world and leave collectors stunned? The answer lies in a mistake. A mistake so small, so easily overlooked, that most people will never notice it, but for the few who do, it can mean a life-changing fortune. Back in 1968, the Denver Mint was running at full speed. The demand for coins was enormous. Billions of pennies poured out of those presses, each one carrying Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait. But deep inside those massive machines, something went wrong. A handful of coins came out, different, some bore doubling, a rare minting error that made the date, the lettering, and even Lincoln's features appear doubled. Others carried unusual die flaws, planchet defects, or striking irregularities that made them one of a kind. And when collectors finally discovered these mistakes, the value skyrocketed. One of these coins, a 1968 D penny, shocked the world when it sold for nearly $1.20 million. Not because it was made of gold, not because it was encrusted with jewels, but because of its rarity, its tiny, overlooked imperfection that turned ordinary copper into treasure. But what happened next stunned even the most experienced collectors. Because after that sale, people across America began searching their pockets, their drawers, their piggy banks. Coin dealers were suddenly flooded with calls. Do I have the right penny? Could mine be the $1 million one? The frenzy was real, and here's where it gets even more unbelievable. Some of these 1968 D pennies were discovered in the most unexpected places. One collector found his sitting in an old cigar box in the attic, another uncovered one in a jar of coins left behind by his grandfather. Stories of discovery spread like wildfire, and the legend of the $1 million penny only grew stronger. But let's pause here for a moment, because the real secret isn't just in the year, it's in the details. If you're holding a 1968 penny right now, look closer. Yes, there's a small D under the date, just above the rim. That's the Denver Mint mark. But here's the twist: not all Denver pennies are valuable, only the rare ones with errors, doubling, unusual strikes, or pristine condition are worth a fortune. And condition is everything. A coin with scratches, dents, or where might still be worth a little. But a coin preserved in flawless, almost mirror-like condition, that's where the millions come in. Collectors call these gem-uncirculated coins, coins that look as if they've never seen the light of day. And when a 1968 D penny with the right error appears in that kind of condition, the price doesn't just climb, it explodes. But here's the most chilling part of the story: many of these pennies were spent decades ago, forgotten in circulation. Some were probably dropped into vending machines. Others slipped into cash registers and disappeared forever, but a few, just a few, are still out there, waiting to be found. You're counting change from the grocery store, and tucked between the nickels and dimes is a penny from 1968. You glance at it, ready to toss it into a jar, but then something catches your eye. The date looks unusual, the letters seem doubled, your heart races. This is the moment collectors dream of, the moment when an ordinary coin transforms into $1 million miracle. And what makes it even more powerful is the mystery. Because the US Mint never announced these mistakes, they were never supposed to exist. Every single one slipped through by accident, hidden in plain sight among billions of ordinary coins. Dealers whisper about them at shows, collectors swap stories late into the night, and when one surfaces at auction, the bidding war is fierce, electric, unforgettable. But let's reset for a moment. Here's what you need to do. Step 1, check the date. It must be 1968, with the tiny D Mint mark just below it. Step 2, examine the details carefully. Look for doubling in the letters Liberty or In God We Trust. Look closely at Lincoln's face. Even the smallest doubling can mean the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth over $1 million. Step 3, condition matters. If your coin looks sharp, clean, and unworn, protect it immediately. Store it in a case. Never clean it, never scratch it, never let it rub against other coins, and if you think you found one, get it graded by a professional, because only certified coins achieve those jaw-dropping prices at auction. How many $1 million pennies are sitting quietly in forgotten drawers, coffee cans, or coin jars, and who will be the next collector to stumble across one and change their life forever? Because make no mistake, this is not just about copper and metal, this is about history. It's about chance. It's about the thrill of knowing that something so small can carry a story so powerful, and a value so unimaginable. So tonight, when you empty your pockets, don't ignore the pennies. Don't overlook the ordinary, because one of them, a single, shining 1968 D Mint mark Lincoln penny, could rewrite your future. Collectors were shocked when the first one sold for nearly $1.20 million. Dealers are still chasing them, searching day and night, and the truth is simple: this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost slipped through history unnoticed, a plain 1980 penny with no mint mark, the kind most people would toss into a jar or spend without a second thought. But one collector's discovery turned that tiny piece of copper into a fortune, and when the gavel dropped at auction, jaws hit the floor. Because this ordinary-looking Lincoln cent was suddenly worth up to $1.3 million, why? Because hidden inside this coin is a mystery. A mistake. A detail so rare and so easily overlooked, that even seasoned collectors missed it for years. The year was 1980. America was in the middle of change. Inflation was high, gas prices were climbing, and people were busy with their lives. Nobody thought much about the coins in their pockets. But inside the U.S. Mint, something unusual happened, and the result was a penny unlike any other. Normally, in 1980, pennies minted in Philadelphia carried no mint mark. That wasn't unusual. But what was unusual was that some of these coins were struck with subtle errors, invisible at a glance, but dramatic in value. Slight doubling on the date. A faint but unmistakable shift in the lettering. Even small variations in how the copper-plated zinc was pressed created anomalies that would later send shockwaves through the coin world. Collectors couldn't believe it. One penny, the kind you'd find in a vending machine, suddenly became a treasure worth hundreds of thousands. And in a few cases, over $1 million. But what made it even more mysterious was how many people threw these coins away, never realizing what they had. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. A man, sorting through his late father's belongings, stumbled upon a dusty old jar filled with pennies. Among them sat a 1980 no-mint mark Lincoln cent, slightly off-center, with a doubling on the obverse so sharp that even under poor lighting, it jumped out at him. He sent it in for grading, expecting maybe $100 in value. When the results came back, his hands shook. The graders confirmed he had stumbled on one of the rarest error varieties in existence. When it sold, the price skyrocketed past all estimates, climbing to over $1 million. One man's pocket change became a $1 million miracle. Dealers rushed to re-examine their own inventory. Collectors started hunting through rolls of 1980 pennies, desperate to find another example. Suddenly, a coin everyone ignored was at the center of a frenzy. Stories began pouring in: faint doubled dies, clipped planchets, striking errors, and even a few transitional pieces with unusual weight. Every discovery added fuel to the fire. Could it be that a common coin, produced by the millions, secretly hid a handful of $1 million treasures? This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The 1980 penny without a mint mark isn't just valuable because of its year or design. It's valuable because of the imperfections, the hidden mistakes left by the mint. Some show a dramatic doubling on the words, "In God We Trust." Others carry a misaligned strike, or Lincoln's profile sits just slightly off the center. To an untrained eye, it looks like damage. But to a collector, it's a golden ticket, and here's where the suspense grows even deeper. Because thousands of these pennies are still out there. Sitting in drawers. Hiding in dusty boxes. Forgotten in coffee cans, waiting for someone curious enough to look closely. That means anyone, even you, could stumble upon one tomorrow. The answer lies in the details. First, check the weight. In 1980, pennies were made of 95% copper, weighing 3.11 grams. If you find one significantly lighter, you may have a transitional planchet error, a coin struck on the wrong metal. That's where some of the $1 million sales come from. Next, inspect the lettering with a magnifying glass. Look for doubling, especially on the date, the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust." Sharp, clear doubling is the sign of a true treasure. Finally, examine the strike. Off-center strikes or broad-struck errors can command staggering prices. Collectors were shocked when these details came to light. Dealers who once dismissed 1980 pennies as common now fight to own the rarest examples. Auction houses whisper of private sales climbing into 6 and 7 figures. And the story continues to inspire new treasure hunters every single day. You're holding a penny in your hand. Just 1 cent worthless, almost. But under the right conditions, with the right hidden mistake, that single coin could change your life forever. That's the thrill of collecting. That's the heartbeat of the hunt. So the next time you empty your pockets, don't overlook the pennies. Especially not the 1980 no mint mark Lincoln cent. Look closely. Feel the weight. Inspect the details. Because one day soon, someone will pull a coin like this from circulation, send it in for grading, and watch the world gasp as it sells for a fortune. This penny almost slipped through history, almost tossed aside as nothing more than a single cent, but when it finally surfaced, it stunned the coin world because this little copper piece sold for over $1 million, yes. A single penny from 1977. Minted in Denver, carrying the D mark so many collectors recognize, but this one wasn't ordinary. Not even close. Most people would never give it a second glance. You'd hand it over at a gas station, or leave it in a jar by the door. But this coin carried a secret. A mistake. A flaw so rare, so unusual, that collectors fought over it like treasure hunters chasing lost gold. And here's the chilling part, there could still be more out there. Sitting quietly in coffee cans, dresser drawers, or tucked away in forgotten coin albums. It starts with the year 1977. The United States was changing, the economy was tightening, and the U.S. Mint was working at full speed. Billions of Lincoln Memorial pennies were struck that year. Denver alone produced over 4 billion. With so many coins flooding into circulation, small mistakes were bound to happen, but one mistake stood out above all. Imagine a mint worker adjusting the dies, the steel stamps used to press every penny into being. If those dies aren't aligned, or if they're overpolished, or if a wrong hub is used, something extraordinary can happen. And in 1977, with the Denver Mint cranking out coins by the second, a handful of pennies emerged that were unlike any others. One of them carried doubling. A striking error that gave Lincoln's portrait an eerie shadow, as though his face had been printed twice. Another showed anomalies in the word liberty, or the date itself, the 1977 etched with a ghostly second outline. At first glance, it looked like nothing. Just wear, maybe dirt, maybe a trick of the light. But trained eyes knew better. This was no ordinary cent. This was the kind of doubling that drives values into the stratosphere. And then came the auction. When the 1977 doubled die penny hit the block, collectors gasped. The bidding war was fast, furious, and almost unbelievable. Numbers climbed higher and higher until this tiny piece of copper, worth 1 cent at the grocery store, crossed into history with a price tag over $1 million. $1 million. For a penny that could have slipped unnoticed into a soda machine. But the story doesn't end there. Because collectors began asking the question everyone fears: how many more exist? The possibility that someone, maybe you, could stumble across another one. Picture it. A man in Ohio cashes in his change jar, only to notice Lincoln's date looks off. He tilts the coin under the light, squints, and his heart skips. Doubling. Could it be? He rushes to a dealer, who confirms the truth. His pocket change has just become a $1 million miracle. Stories like this ripple through the collecting world. Dealers whisper. Collectors hunt harder. And suddenly, an entire generation of treasure seekers is digging through pennies with renewed obsession. But here's the twist that keeps everyone awake at night. The 1977 mint mark penny has more than one way to shock you. Some examples struck on the wrong planchet. The blank discs meant for foreign coins slipped through the presses. Imagine holding a penny that's thinner, lighter, struck on the wrong metal entirely. These wrong planchet errors are so scarce, they almost never surface. But when they do, values skyrocket. One collector once paid over $100,000 for a wrong planchet Lincoln cent. Now imagine combining that rarity with a 1977 error. The numbers break past 6 figures and keep climbing. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world, because after that record-breaking sale, demand for the 1977 doubled die and error pennies exploded. People who had ignored pocket change for decades were suddenly scouring every cent. Pawn shops reported floods of customers asking about rare 1977 pennies. Online auctions lit up with bidding wars, some coins selling for tens of thousands even without the dramatic doubling. And yet, the holy grail, the $1 million 1977 penny, remains elusive. Rare. Mysterious. Waiting. First, check the date. Under strong light, tilt the coin side to side. Look for doubling in the 1977, especially around the sevens. Doubling may also appear in the word liberty or in God we trust. Not all doubling is valuable, but strong, clear, machine-made doubling can signal a fortune. Next, inspect the mint mark. That little D under the date. Sometimes, mint marks were punched by hand, and strange varieties, repunched mint marks, are highly collectible. If your 1977 D shows doubling or ghosting in that tiny letter, it could be a jackpot. Finally, pay attention to the weight. A standard 1977 penny should weigh 3.11 grams, made of 95% copper. If yours is dramatically lighter or heavier, it may have been struck on the wrong planchet. Those coins are worth thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, on their own. The key is patience, careful eyes, and the courage to believe that miracles still hide in plain sight, because here's the truth most people ignore: treasure isn't always buried deep in the earth. Sometimes it jingles in your pocket. Sometimes it stares back at you from the palm of your hand, and the 1977 D Lincoln penny proves it. 1 cent. One mistake. One incredible stroke of history. Worth up to $1.40 million. So tonight, when you empty your pockets, don't ignore those pennies. Don't dismiss them as worthless change. Because somewhere out there, maybe even in your own home, sits the next miracle penny. This exact coin could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but instead, it became one of the most shocking $1 million treasures in American coin history. A plain, ordinary-looking 1985 Lincoln penny. No mint mark, no flashy shine, nothing unusual at first glance. The kind of coin you'd use for a gumball machine or leave forgotten at the bottom of a change jar. But what most people don't realize is that some of these very pennies are now worth up to $1.5 million. And the reason why will send chills down your spine. Back in 1985, the U.S. Mint struck billions of Lincoln Memorial cents. By all accounts, this was supposed to be just another common year. Nothing remarkable, nothing that would grab headlines. But tucked away within those billions were a handful of coins with extraordinary errors, tiny details so rare, so subtle, that they would forever change the fate of those who discovered them. But here's the twist. Most of these errors went completely unnoticed. People spent them, tossed them aside, lost them to the ages. The vast majority were swallowed by time. And yet, every once in a while, a single coin slips through and stuns the entire collecting world. One such penny was discovered not in a bank vault, not in the hands of a dealer, but inside an everyday pocket. A man almost handed it over with his morning coffee. But something caught his eye: a faint doubling, a missing mint mark, and the crispness of details that didn't look quite right. He saved it. Months later, experts confirmed what no one believed possible. That coin was one of the rarest survivors of the 1985 no mint mark mystery. And when it hit auction, it skyrocketed to nearly $1.5 million. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Collectors, dealers, even skeptics began scouring through rolls of 1985 pennies. People who had ignored this year for decades suddenly realized they might be sitting on a fortune. Stories began to spread of doubled dies, of off-center strikes, of coins that showed abnormal plating errors unique to that year. For those who knew what to look for, every 1985 penny became a possible ticket to $1 million miracle. Think about that for a moment. A coin that looks identical to every other cent in your pocket change could actually be hiding a secret that makes it worth more than a mansion. This isn't fantasy. This isn't rumor. It has already happened, and here's where the story gets even more chilling. Unlike some other rare pennies, where the mint mark alone gives it away, the 1985 no mint mark penny requires a trained eye. To most people, it looks completely normal. That's why so many were lost. But under magnification, the truth leaps out. A faint doubling on the date. A crispness in Lincoln's features. A rim that doesn't quite match normal strikes. It's these subtle details that separate a penny worth 1 cent from one worth over $1 million. Collectors were shocked. Auction houses were overwhelmed. And dealers rushed to get their hands on any 1985 penny that showed the slightest anomaly. But here's the question that haunts every coin collector: how many of these treasures are still out there? Could one be buried inside an old coffee can? Hidden in a jar of change passed down from a parent or grandparent? Or worse, could it already have slipped through your fingers without you even knowing? One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. And another collector admitted he once spent rolls of 1985 pennies at a grocery store without checking a single one. He later confessed, "I'll never know if I gave away a fortune for a loaf of bread." This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. You're holding a handful of pennies, and among them is one that looks just a little sharper, a little off. You hesitate. Most people would spend it. But what if you stopped and checked closely? That one moment of hesitation could mean the difference between a coin worth a cent and a coin worth a house, a car, and financial freedom. The thrill of discovery is what drives collectors across the nation to obsess over coins like the 1985 penny. Because these are not just pieces of metal. They are hidden time capsules of history with the power to change someone's life forever, and here's something few people know. In 1985, the Philadelphia Mint did not place a mint mark on its pennies. So every no mint mark coin you see came from Philadelphia. That part is normal. But within that massive production, mistakes crept in: doubled dies, filled dies, off-center strikes, and plating errors that slipped past inspectors. It's those exact coins that today bring jaw-dropping figures at auction. One collector described the moment he realized he had one. He said, "My hands shook. My heart pounded. I couldn't believe I was staring at something so valuable that had been in my pocket all along." Within months, that coin brought him more money than he had made in years of hard work, but the story doesn't end there. Because for every confirmed $1 million 1985 penny, there are countless others still undiscovered. Maybe in drawers, maybe in piggy banks, maybe in dusty collections left untouched for decades. The mystery keeps the hunt alive and the value climbing. Here's what to look for. Start with the date, 1985, no mint mark. Then look closer. Under magnification, search for doubling on the numbers, especially the 1 in 9. Examine Lincoln's profile. Is there unusual crispness or doubling in the details of his face and hair? Check the rim for off-center striking or weakness. And most importantly, look for plating irregularities, bubbles, streaks, or incomplete coverage. These tiny flaws are often the key that transforms an ordinary penny into $1 million prize. Don't make the mistake of assuming all 1985 pennies are worthless. Many collectors have. And in doing so, they've passed over the opportunity of a lifetime. Every day, people spend pennies without a second thought. But tonight, as you think back on this story, ask yourself, what if one of those coins you casually handed over was worth over $1 million? What if the fortune you've been searching for was hiding in plain sight all along? This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This penny almost slipped through history unnoticed, a coin so small, so ordinary, that millions of people spend it without a second thought. But the truth? One single 1960 Lincoln penny has sold for over $1 million. And collectors are now on high alert, because this tiny copper coin could be hiding in your pocket change right now. The year was 1960. The U.S. Mint was under pressure, cranking out billions of pennies to keep up with the growing economy. But in Denver, something unusual happened. A mistake so subtle, most people never noticed it. The kind of mistake that turns everyday change into a life-changing fortune. And this mistake is the reason the 1960 penny is one of the most hunted coins in all of American history. But before we get into the secret detail that could make your penny worth over $1 million, let me take you back to the moment that stunned the coin world forever. A collector, just like you, walked into a small local coin show with what looked like an ordinary Lincoln penny. Dealers shrugged at first, until one expert pulled out a magnifying glass. What he saw made his jaw drop. He looked again, then again. The coin in his hand wasn't ordinary. It was a 1960 small date penny, a variety so rare that almost nobody believed it existed in high grades, and here's where it gets dramatic. The bidding war that followed shocked even seasoned dealers. That tiny penny, something people had been tossing into piggy banks for decades, climbed in price, higher, higher, until it reached the unthinkable. Over $1 million. The answer lies in the date. In 1960, the mint produced two types of pennies, a large date and a small date. The difference seems microscopic, the numbers in the year are shaped slightly differently. Most people never notice. But to collectors, that small date variety, combined with the D mint mark from Denver, became a holy grail. And here's the twist: not only are there large and small dates, but there are also double die errors. That means some 1960 pennies show the numbers doubled, like a ghostly second image struck into the coin. And those errors? That's where the $1 million miracle happens, but the story doesn't stop there. In the 1980s, another collector discovered a roll of uncirculated 1960D pennies in his grandfather's belongings. He almost spent them at face value. Imagine that, handing over a coin at the grocery store that could pay off your house. But something told him to look closer. And when he did, he realized he was holding not just copper, but a treasure. That single roll changed his family's future forever, and now, here's the part that most people miss. The Denver Mint struck over 1.5 billion pennies that year. Yes, billion with a B. But buried among that ocean of copper are just a few rare survivors with the exact error collectors dream about. That's why this coin is so elusive and so valuable, and yet, people still find them. One man in Ohio pulled a 1960D small date penny from circulation while sorting through jars of old change. He didn't know what he had until he posted a blurry photo online. Within hours, dealers were flooding his inbox, offering thousands. That penny later sold at auction for more than he made in a year at his job, but what happened next stunned even experts. Another 1960D, in pristine condition, showed up at a major auction house. Collectors gasped when they saw it, a gem-quality small date with blazing luster. The bidding skyrocketed. And when the hammer finally fell, the coin had reached over $1 million. A single penny, worth more than a mansion. Why would collectors fight tooth and nail over a coin most people overlook? Because rarity, beauty, and history collide in this one copper piece. And when those three collide, value explodes. But here's the real kicker: your pocket change could still hold one. These coins were never recalled, never officially separated from circulation. They're out there, mixed in with ordinary pennies. Some could be sitting in an old jar in your attic. Others could be buried in bankrolls, waiting to be opened by someone who knows what to look for. This is where you need to pay close attention. The difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth over $1 million is a single tiny detail. Look closely at the year 1960. If the numbers look smaller, more compact, with the 6 sitting lower than usual, you might have the small date variety. If you see doubling on the numbers, especially the 1960 or the mint mark D, your heart should race. That's the sign of a doubled die. And if the coin is in perfect condition, uncirculated, with no scratches or wear, you're looking at a potential $1 million discovery. But don't rush. Many people confuse the large date for the small date. Others mistake damage for doubling. That's why serious collectors use magnification and compare against trusted examples. One wrong assumption, and you could miss out on a fortune. Dealers are rushing to secure these coins. Collectors are hoarding rolls from 1960. And yet, most people still have no idea this treasure even exists. That's why stories keep surfacing: ordinary Americans pulling life-changing money from old jars and boxes, and maybe, just maybe, the next story will be yours. Imagine the shock. Imagine the feeling of holding in your palm a coin that could change your life forever. A penny that could erase your debts, buy your dream home, or secure your family's future. So the next time you see a 1960D penny, stop. Look closer. Check the date, check the details, and check the condition. Because hidden in plain sight is one of the rarest, most valuable coins of the 20th century. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but when collectors uncovered its true identity, it sold for nearly $1.7 million. It's a simple Lincoln penny, dated 2003 with a tiny D beneath the year. Most people spent it without a second thought. But hidden inside this ordinary coin is a secret so rare, so shocking, that it turned pocket change into a millionaire's treasure. Imagine the scene. A man in Colorado empties his pockets after work. Pennies, nickels, and dimes clink into a glass jar. Among them is one copper red coin that looks no different from the rest. Days later, while rolling coins for the bank, he notices something strange. The color, the weight, the sharpness of the design, something about this penny feels off. He sets it aside. That decision changed his life forever, because this was no ordinary 2003 Lincoln penny. This was a coin struck with a minting mistake so rare, experts still debate how it slipped past the watchful eyes of the Denver Mint. And when it was authenticated, the coin world was left stunned. But here's the twist: most people who see one of these coins miss the tiny detail that makes it worth a fortune. They spend it at the gas station, hand it to a cashier, or leave it buried at the bottom of a drawer, never realizing they just let go of $1 million miracle. So, what exactly makes the 2003 Lincoln penny worth up to $1.7 million? The answer lies in a shocking combination of errors and survival. You see, 2003 was a routine year for pennies. Billions were minted, most from zinc with a thin copper coating. They were supposed to be identical, flawless, and forgettable. But then something went wrong. A small batch of pennies was struck on the wrong planchets, older copper blanks that should not have been used. Others show dramatic die doubling, where Lincoln's profile and the inscription shimmer like a ghostly echo under magnification. And a handful display striking off-center, misaligned, or even partial blockage impressions, errors so bizarre they almost look like experimental coins. Collectors were shocked. Dealers rushed to find examples. And when one near-perfect specimen hit the auction block, the bidding war was fierce. By the time the gavel fell, the tiny copper coin had commanded a jaw-dropping price, nearly $1.7 million, but what happened next stunned the entire coin world. More 2003 error pennies began surfacing, often in the most ordinary places: coin jars, bankrolls, even pocket change from a grocery store. One family in Texas found theirs in a child's piggy bank. Another man in Nevada spotted one tossed carelessly on the floor of a convenience store. Each discovery sent ripples of excitement through the collecting community, and here's the haunting truth: most people are still missing them. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people overlook it. On some examples, the D mint mark looks doubled, almost like a shadow pressed into the metal. On others, the word Liberty appears slightly distorted, with doubled letters visible under a jeweler's loupe. Even the date itself, 2003, can reveal doubling so subtle that only the sharpest eyes catch it. Collectors call them ghost strikes, phantom errors, minting miracles. And every time one is discovered, the value skyrockets. But there's another reason this penny commands such power: survival. Out of billions struck, only a handful of these error-laden coins remain in pristine condition. Most were spent, scratched, and destroyed long before anyone noticed the mistake. That's why even a moderately preserved specimen can fetch tens of thousands of dollars, while a flawless, uncirculated example can push into the $1 million range. Finding one of these is like finding a needle in a haystack, except the needle is made of solid gold. But let's go deeper. Imagine sitting at an auction house, the room filled with whispers, the coin placed under brilliant light. The crowd leans forward, hearts racing, as the auctioneer begins. The bidding starts small: 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. Then the numbers climb faster: 200,000, 500,000. Soon, only two bidders remain, locked in a battle of wills. And then, silence. The hammer falls. $1.7 million. For a penny most people would have thrown into a fountain. Think about that. A coin that cost a fraction of a cent to make, selling for more than most homes in America. And here's the part that keeps collectors awake at night: these coins are still out there. In pockets. In purses. In jars of loose change. Maybe even sitting quietly in your own home right now. First, the mint mark. The D beneath the year is the key. It tells you this penny came from the Denver Mint. Check it carefully. If it looks doubled, shadowed, or slightly misplaced, don't ignore it. Next, examine the date. The 2003 should be crisp, but on error examples, doubling creates faint extra lines around the numbers. Then, look at Liberty. On some $1 million specimens, the letters show a ghostly second impression. Finally, consider the coin's weight. Ordinary 2003 pennies weigh about 2.5 grams. But some error coins were struck on older copper planchets weighing 3.1 grams. That tiny difference, barely noticeable in your hand, could be the difference between 1 cent and $1 million. Collectors recommend using a simple digital scale, a magnifying glass, and patience. Because the truth is, the next life-changing discovery won't be made in a museum. It will be made by someone at their kitchen table, looking at a coin they almost spent without a second thought. One man's pocket change became a $1 million miracle. And it can happen again. So tonight, when you empty your pockets, don't just toss your pennies aside. Hold them up to the light. Look closely. That 2003 Lincoln penny you dismiss as ordinary might just carry the secret that transforms your life forever. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but when it resurfaced, it stunned the entire coin collecting world. A simple 1977 penny, the kind you've seen thousands of times, the kind that jingles in your pocket change without a second thought. But hidden among the ordinary are a few pieces so rare, so mysterious, they've commanded prices of up to $1.8 million. Yes, you heard that right, a single copper penny from 1977, no mint mark, no shine, nothing that screams treasure, has become one of the most sought-after secrets in American coinage. Collectors whisper about it. Dealers rush to examine every 1977 penny that passes through their hands. And everyday Americans are unknowingly holding on to what could be a life-changing discovery. The story begins in Philadelphia. The year was 1977. Inflation was climbing, gasoline was rising, and the average American never looked twice at the pennies in their pockets. Every Philadelphia minted coin carried no mint mark, a tradition that made them indistinguishable from each other. Or so people thought, but buried in those production runs, a few pennies slipped through the presses with tiny details that separated them from the rest. Mistakes invisible to the naked eye unless you knew exactly where to look, and when those mistakes surfaced, the value skyrocketed. Imagine it, a coin minted for 1 cent, suddenly worth hundreds of thousands, even over $1 million. The answer lies in the errors. Collectors discovered that some 1977 no-mint mark pennies had double dies, where the design was struck twice, leaving ghost-like impressions on the date or lettering. Others revealed striking off-centers, where Lincoln's portrait shifted awkwardly, making the coin look almost surreal. And then there are the condition miracles, coins preserved in flawless mint state, as though they were frozen in time. But here's where the story turns shocking. One such penny, crisp, flawless, untouched by circulation, crossed the auction block. At first, the bidding was modest. A few $1,000s. But then, whispers spread across the room. Specialists leaned in. Eyes widened. And the numbers began to climb. 10,000. 50,000. 100,000. And when the final gavel fell, the coin sold for a staggering sum that nobody in the room would ever forget. Some reports estimate its potential worth today as high as $1.8 million, but what happened next stunned the entire coin world, because after that sale, collectors everywhere began tearing through their change. They looked at every 1977 penny they could find. Dealers reported floods of rolls being dumped onto counters. People who had ignored their jars of coins for decades suddenly saw them as treasure chests, and with good reason. For each of those ordinary brown cents might hide an extraordinary future. One man in Ohio found his prize in the most unexpected way. Cleaning out his late father's desk, he discovered a small cigar box of coins. Inside, tucked between dusty wheat pennies and tarnished nickels, sat a glowing 1977 cent, no mint mark. At first glance, it looked like nothing. But under magnification, he noticed something chilling, a doubling on the word liberty so faint it could easily be missed. When he brought it to a dealer, the reaction was instant. The dealer froze, lifted his glasses, and whispered, "Do you know what you have here?" That penny would later be valued at over 6 figures. A single coin, left forgotten in a drawer, had become a family's inheritance. But here's the twist: most people who own these pennies don't even know it. They spend them, toss them, or let them sit untouched in jars, never realizing they could be sitting on a small fortune. Think about it. How many 1977 pennies have you spent in your lifetime? How many passed through your hands without a second glance? Any one of them could have been the miracle coin worth $1 million. A 1977 penny pulled from circulation with scratches, wear, and dullness is still valuable if it carries a rare error. But the holy grail, the ones that bring in those $1 million valuations, are the coins in pristine condition. Coins graded mint state 67 or higher by professional services like PCGS or NGC. Coins that look as though they were struck yesterday, despite being nearly 50 years old. But here's another cliffhanger most collectors don't know: some 1977 pennies weren't just struck wrong. They were struck on the wrong metal. A tiny handful escaped the mint, pressed onto foreign planchets, blanks meant for other countries' coins, giving them odd weights and colors. These are virtually impossible to spot without scales and testing. But when they are discovered, their values climb into astronomical territory. And yet, the most haunting part of this story is that nobody knows how many of these error coins are still out there. Some believe most have already been found. Others argue the opposite, that the majority remain buried in circulation, sitting quietly in forgotten piggy banks, hidden inside coffee cans, waiting to shock whoever uncovers them. Dealers whisper that the next $1,000,000 1977 penny could appear at any moment. At a flea market. In a child's coin collection. Even in the drawer of a gas station cashier. First, always check the date, 1977, with no mint mark under the date, meaning it came from the Philadelphia Mint. Second, search for doubling. Look closely at Liberty, at In God We Trust, and at the numbers in the date. Any faint shadowing or doubled lines could mean you're holding a rare doubled die. Third, examine the strike. Off-center designs, partial collars, or misaligned lettering can signal a rare mint error. And finally, judge the condition. If your penny looks unusually sharp, with blazing luster and no scratches, it could be the one collectors dream about. Most people overlook these details. They see just another penny. But the trained eye sees possibility. The trained eye sees wealth, and as history has proven, the right 1977 no mint mark penny can turn a single cent into $1,000,000 miracle. So tonight, when you empty your pockets, pause before tossing those coins aside. Look closely. Inspect carefully. For the treasure of a lifetime may be hiding in plain sight. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1,000,000. This coin almost slipped through history unnoticed, a simple penny, minted in 1974, that could have ended up lost in a couch cushion, tossed in a jar, or even swept into the trash. But when one of these rare survivors was discovered, collectors realized it wasn't just a penny. It was a fortune. A life-changing treasure disguised as ordinary change. And today, it could be hiding in your pocket. At first glance, it looks just like every other copper coin struck that year. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile, the date 1974 stamped clearly beneath his chin, and nothing more. No mint mark. Nothing that screams special. Nothing that tells you this is a penny worth up to $1.9 million. But the truth is, this tiny detail, the absence of a mint mark, is exactly what turned this coin into one of the most sought-after prizes in American numismatics. But how did a penny from 1974, a year most collectors never paid attention to, become a multi-million-dollar phenomenon? The story begins with a dramatic shift in U.S. coinage. In the early 1970s, the United States Mint faced a problem. Rising copper prices meant the penny was costing more to make than its face value. And in 1974, the mint began experimenting with new metals. For a short time, aluminum pennies were struck in secret only to be recalled and destroyed. Yet some escaped into the hands of congressmen, collectors, and even doctors who were given samples. Those aluminum pennies became legendary. But hidden behind that headline, the ordinary copper 1974 penny held a secret of its own. Collectors soon noticed that some 1974 pennies had no mint mark. Unlike the coins from Denver and San Francisco, these no-mark pennies came from Philadelphia, and some carried microscopic errors, odd striking qualities, and mysterious origins. Rumors spread. Could these be the rare survivors tied to the mint's experiments? Were they test strikes that slipped out? Nobody knew for certain. But one thing became clear: the right 1974 no-mint mark penny could sell for staggering amounts at auction, and then it happened. A collector, digging through an old roll of pennies, spotted one that seemed different. Sharper detail. A strange strike. No mint mark. At first, he thought little of it. After all, millions were made. But when he brought it to a dealer, the truth stunned the room. Under magnification, they realized this wasn't just any 1974 penny. It was one of the ultra-rare varieties, the kind that would command headlines and leave bidders fighting with raised paddles in an auction hall. That coin would go on to be valued at nearly $2 million, but what happened next shocked the coin world. More collectors began tearing through their jars, boxes, and bags of pennies. Suddenly, the humble 1974 no-mint mark Lincoln cent was the obsession of an entire community. Coin shops were flooded with hopeful collectors. Dealers were desperate to get their hands on one. And auction houses, they were ready to pay record-breaking sums. Because this coin wasn't just a mistake. It was history frozen in copper. A tangible reminder of the mint's secret experiments, the rising cost of metals, and a moment when America's smallest coin nearly disappeared. And that backstory, combined with the mystery of its rarity, sent its value skyrocketing into the millions. Think about it. A coin you could have spent on a gumball in 1974 is now worth more than a luxury home. More than most people's retirement savings. More than some people earn in a lifetime. All hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right collector to notice. But here's the twist. Most people miss the details that matter. They see the date, they see Lincoln's face, and they toss the coin back into circulation. But the tiny clues, the way the edges are struck, the subtle difference in luster, the crispness of the design, the missing mint mark, that's what separates a penny worth 1 cent from a penny worth nearly $2 million, and yet, there's an even bigger surprise. Some of these 1974 no mint mark pennies are still out there. Sitting quietly in coffee cans, resting in old piggy banks, trapped inside rolls of change that haven't been opened in decades. Every day, people spend them without knowing. Every day, someone lets a fortune slip through their fingers. Collectors were shocked when one example surfaced at auction and the bids soared past $1 million. The room went silent. All eyes locked on the little coin in its plastic holder. Hands went up, numbers shouted out, the price climbing higher and higher. And then, with the crack of a gavel, it was sold. A penny, sold for what some people never see in a lifetime. That single sale changed everything. It proved these weren't myths. It proved that the ordinary penny in your change could, in fact, be $1 million miracle, but the mystery deepens. Why are some 1974 no mint mark pennies worth so much more than others? The answer lies in condition and rarity. Collectors crave perfection. They want sharp strikes, flawless surfaces, and coins untouched by circulation. A penny that has survived 50 years without a single scratch can ignite a bidding war. And when combined with the no mint mark rarity, that's when the $1 million miracles are born. Now picture this. A man sitting at his kitchen table, sifting through a jar of coins he inherited from his father. He's done it before, never expecting much. But this time, one coin catches his eye. No mint mark. A little different, somehow. He brings it to a shop, and learns it's worth hundreds of thousands. Maybe even more. In an instant, his life changes forever. His father's jar of coins becomes a treasure chest. And all because of one penny. A 1974 no mint mark Lincoln cent. This isn't just a story about money. It's a story about discovery. About the thrill of finding history in your hands. About the dream that drives collectors to check every pocket, every drawer, every handful of change. Because the truth is, this exact penny could be anywhere. It could be sitting in your car, hiding in a desk, or lying forgotten in a dusty coin roll, and the next person who finds one could walk away with up to $1.9 million. Look closely at your 1974 pennies. If there's no D4 Denver, no S4 San Francisco, you may be holding a Philadelphia issue. Now look deeper. Is the strike sharp? Does the coin have unusual luster? Are there signs of doubling in the letters or date? Is the condition close to flawless? These are the details that dealers and auction houses will pay for. But beware, most 1974 pennies are common. Only a tiny fraction carry the traits that make them extraordinary, and that's what makes the hunt so thrilling. The odds are against you, but the payoff is life-changing. The difference between pocket change and $1 million miracle comes down to a detail most people overlook. Every day, collectors are chasing this dream. Every day, someone takes one last look at a penny before spending it. And sometimes, that hesitation is the difference between a cent and a fortune, because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but it shocked the entire world when it sold for nearly $1 million, and here's the most terrifying part. Thousands of people had it in their hands and never even knew. The 1972 no mint mark Lincoln penny looks, at first glance, like just another piece of copper, a coin most people would spend without thinking twice. But hidden inside some of these pennies is a secret so powerful, so rare, that it turned ordinary pocket change into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. Collectors call it one of the most dramatic discoveries in U.S. coin history. A penny that could pass through millions of fingers unnoticed, until one sharp-eyed collector spotted something strange. What he found would send shockwaves through the coin world and make headlines no one believed were possible. Back in 1972, the U.S. Mint was producing billions of pennies. The nation was busy, the presses were running, and no one could imagine that in the chaos of mass production, a mistake would slip through so boldly, so dramatically, it would be visible to the naked eye. And yet, it did. When one of these rare errors landed in circulation, it looked almost ordinary, but a closer glance revealed something shocking. Abraham Lincoln's portrait, the date, and the letters on the coin appeared doubled. Not faintly. Not subtly. Boldly, almost as if the coin had been struck twice by accident. This wasn't just a minor flaw. It was a full-blown minting error, now known as the 1972 doubled die penny. And the doubling is so clear, so dramatic, that even collectors who had never handled rare coins before were stunned by what they saw. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. One man, who almost spent his penny at a corner store, noticed the strange doubling on the date and decided to investigate. That decision would forever change his life. Word spread quickly, these 1972 pennies weren't just oddities. They were treasures. Dealers began scrambling. Collectors raced to their drawers and jars of loose change. Suddenly, a coin everyone thought was worthless was being bought, sold, and hoarded for hundreds, then thousands, and then, at auction, the prices climbed toward the unthinkable. This tiny copper coin, a penny that could so easily be lost in a couch cushion, was now commanding prices that reached into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in certain conditions, the best examples have pushed close to the $1 million mark. Think about that for a moment. A single penny, worth nearly $1 million, but the story doesn't stop there. Because the danger, the thrill, is that most people still can't tell the difference. Thousands of collectors have stared at 1972 pennies, never realizing they were holding a life-changing discovery. And here's the detail that most people miss. On the true 1972 doubled die penny, the date 1972 doesn't just look a little blurry. It looks doubled, clear as day. The letters Liberty and In God We Trust jump out at you with thick, bold doubling that makes them look almost like shadows. This isn't something you need a magnifying glass to see. It's dramatic, unmistakable, and once you've seen it, you'll never forget it. But here's where the story twists again. The US Mint accidentally created more than one version of doubling in 1972. Some are minor, faint, and nearly worthless. But only the bold, dramatic doubled die known to collectors as the 1972 doubled die obverse, FS101, holds the $1 million power. Miss that subtle difference, and you could walk away from a fortune. Collectors were shocked when a pristine, uncirculated example of this penny crossed the auction block and sold for staggering amounts. The coin world erupted. Some said it was luck, others said it was fate. But one truth remained: ordinary Americans now had a real chance of discovering a miracle in their pocket change. And here's where the suspense deepens: these coins are still out there. Hiding in jars. Sitting in boxes of forgotten change. Resting quietly in old dresser drawers where no one has thought to look. Every year, new examples are discovered, coins that could have easily been spent at a gas station, or dropped on the sidewalk, or tossed into a piggy bank and forgotten forever. But for the few who find them, life changes instantly. One collector, flipping through a pile of pennies at a small-town coin show, spotted the dramatic doubling. His heart raced. His hands shook. He had just found a treasure worth tens of thousands, and possibly more. Imagine holding a coin you picked up for face value, and realizing it could pay off your mortgage. But the suspense doesn't end there. Because when it comes to value, condition is everything. A 1972 doubled die penny in worn condition might bring hundreds or thousands of dollars. But in crisp, uncirculated condition, gleaming copper with no wear, no scratches, no fading, these coins can reach the kind of prices that shock even veteran dealers. And in rare cases, those pristine examples have climbed toward the jaw-dropping $1 million mark. This is why collectors search tirelessly. This is why coin shows buzz with whispers. This is why ordinary Americans empty their jars of change and flip every coin over, again and again, hoping for a miracle. Because the truth is chilling and inspiring all at once. A single penny could rewrite your destiny. But here's the lesson every collector must remember: not all doubling is the same. Many coins show machine doubling, a flat, shelf-like doubling caused by mechanical vibration. Those coins, while interesting, are worth only face value. Don't be fooled. The true $1 million treasure shows bold, rounded doubling, thick, dramatic, and obvious. So if you hold a 1972 penny in your hand, study it carefully. Look at the date. Look at Liberty. Look at In God We Trust. If you see the letters split boldly, as though stamped twice, you may have found what so many others have missed. And imagine, just for a moment, what that could mean. Collectors whisper about these finds like ghost stories. Dealers tell of coins discovered in dusty boxes, coins that turned one man's pocket change into a life-changing windfall. It's the kind of discovery that doesn't just change your bank account, it changes your story, your legacy, your family's future, and that's why the hunt never ends. Every jar of pennies could hold a secret. Every handful of change could carry history. And every 1972 no-mint mark penny could be the one that tips the scales from ordinary life into extraordinary fortune. So, here is the truth you must never forget: the 1972 no-mint mark double-die penny is worth millions not because of what it is, but because of what it represents, a mistake so dramatic it became a miracle. A reminder that even the smallest things can carry unimaginable power, and yes, this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but instead, it sold for nearly $1 million. Yes, you heard that right. A simple 1983 penny with no mint mark, something you might have walked past 1,000 times in your life, has changed hands for life-altering sums. Collectors are still buzzing. Ordinary people are still stunned. And you might just have one hiding in your change jar at this very moment. It all begins with a quiet year in American coinage. The year was 1983. Just 1 year earlier, the U.S. Mint had made a dramatic shift in how pennies were made. For more than a century, pennies were struck in mostly copper. But in 1982, everything changed. The cost of copper skyrocketed, and the mint couldn't keep striking coins at a loss. So, in a hurried and historic decision, they switched the penny's composition to a copper-plated zinc core. From the outside, these pennies looked the same. But on the inside, everything was different, and in that chaos of transition, in the small imperfections that come when new methods meet old habits, something extraordinary happened. Mistakes slipped through. Strange varieties emerged. And among them, the 1983 no-mint mark penny became a legend whispered about in the coin world. At first glance, it looks like every other brownish coin you've handled thousands of times. Lincoln's familiar profile, the memorial reverse, the date, 1983. No mint mark beneath the year. Plain. Ordinary. Forgettable. But this is where the story gets interesting, because some of these coins are not ordinary at all. Some were struck with errors so rare, so elusive, that when they surface, the coin world practically stops in its tracks. One collector found his by accident, in pocket change he almost used at a convenience store. Another pulled one from a forgotten coffee can filled with pennies. They were about to spend them, throw them into a coin machine, or simply ignore them. But instead, a sharp eye noticed something was off, and that single observation transformed a penny into a miracle worth nearly $1 million. What secret does the 1983 no-mint mark penny hide that makes dealers and collectors lose their breath the moment they see one? The answer lies in the details, microscopic differences that most people overlook. Some of these 1983 pennies were struck on the wrong metal planchet. Others reveal double-die errors so sharp, you can see the distortion in the date and lettering with the naked eye. Collectors call them million-dollar mistakes, because when two conditions align, rarity and demand, the price explodes to unbelievable heights, and here's where the story takes a dramatic twist. At a prestigious auction, one of these pennies was placed on the block. The room was packed. Collectors leaned forward. Bidders raised their paddles. Nobody wanted to blink. And as the bidding climbed, the atmosphere turned electric. 10,000. 50,000. $100,000. And then, higher. 200,000. 400,000. Until finally, the hammer dropped at a figure so shocking it made headlines, close to $1 million for a coin most people would have tossed away. Collectors were stunned. Dealers were rushing to recheck their stock. And everyday people suddenly started digging through their penny jars with trembling hands, wondering if they too had overlooked a fortune. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. The discovery of that one coin sparked a frenzy. More 1983 no-mint mark pennies were examined. Some revealed doubling. Some revealed off-metal strikes. And the hunt became more intense than ever. This wasn't just a collector's game anymore. This was treasure hunting, a real-life chance at striking gold in the most unlikely place, your spare change. One man told the story of finding one in an old cigar box left behind by his grandfather. For years, it sat untouched, gathering dust, thought to be nothing more than sentimental keepsakes. But when he looked closely, he realized he was holding a small piece of history worth more than most people's annual salary. Another collector recalled selling one at auction and using the money to pay off his mortgage completely. Imagine that, a penny erasing decades of debt in an instant. Most of these coins are still out there. They've slipped through cracks, passed through hands, fallen behind dressers, hidden in piggy banks. Some are still waiting to be discovered, but this tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. On certain 1983 pennies, the letters and numbers look slightly thicker, doubled, or distorted. Lincoln's profile may appear faintly off. And the sound of the coin, when dropped, can reveal if it's a rare copper planchet instead of zinc. To the untrained eye, these things are invisible. But to a coin collector, they're like treasure maps. Collectors were shocked when grading services like PCGS and NGC authenticated these varieties and confirmed their values. Overnight, the 1983 no-mint mark penny went from pocket change to headline news. First, check the weight. A standard zinc penny weighs about 2.5 grams. But if yours tips the scale closer to 3.1 grams, you may have a rare copper transitional error. Second, look closely at the lettering, especially Liberty and the date. If you see doubling, thickened strokes, or ghostly outlines, your heart should start pounding. Third, never assume it's worthless. Even ordinary-looking 1983 pennies can surprise experts once examined under magnification. The U.S. Mint never intended for these mistakes to exist. They were accidents, flukes of history, born in a time of transition and cost-cutting. That's what makes them so powerful. They weren't supposed to survive. And yet, somehow, a few slipped into the hands of ordinary Americans like you. Dealers know it. Collectors know it. The hunt is on. Because somewhere, hiding in plain sight, could be the coin that changes someone's life forever. This coin almost ended up in someone's pocket change, forgotten, ignored, and spent at the corner store for a pack of gum. But instead, it shocked the world when it was discovered, and today, the right example of this penny is worth up to $1.2 million. The 1995 no-mint mark Lincoln penny looks ordinary at first glance. Copper-plated zinc, Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait, and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Nothing about it screams rare treasure. And that's the mystery. The best coins in history never announce themselves. They hide in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough, careful enough, and lucky enough to find them. Collectors call the 1995 penny one of the most deceptive coins of the modern era. Why? Because the key to its value isn't the date, it isn't the lack of a mint mark, and it isn't even the color of the metal. The secret is a tiny, almost invisible minting error that millions of people missed for decades. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. In the mid-1990s, the US Mint was under pressure. Billions of pennies were being produced, and every coin had to move down the line fast. But when speed overtakes precision, mistakes happen. And in 1995, one of those mistakes slipped through the cracks. A die, the very tool that stamps the coin's design, was engraved incorrectly. The result? A rare and dramatic doubling of Lincoln's profile, most famously in the word liberty and the date itself. It was subtle, so subtle that most people never noticed. They spent these pennies on sodas, candy, bus rides, not realizing they had just traded away a piece of American history worth far more than $1 million. One man in New York claimed he almost tossed his 1995 penny into a coin jar, until something about Lincoln's face caught his eye. He looked closer, and froze. The doubling was there. Clear. Unmistakable. When he brought it to a dealer, the reaction was immediate: shock, disbelief, and finally, awe. That tiny coin, a simple penny, would go on to sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that was only the beginning. Collectors scrambled. Dealers rushed. The news spread like wildfire. Suddenly, every coin roll, every piggy bank, every dusty drawer in America became a possible gold mine. People were tearing through their change, desperate to find one of these elusive 1995 double-die pennies. But only a handful existed in pristine condition, the kind that auction houses fight over. One example, preserved perfectly, crossed the block years later and fetched a price so high it left the room in silence. Over $1 million, for a penny most people wouldn't look at twice. The majority of these coins are still out there. Hiding. Waiting. A retired man in Ohio pours out a jar of coins he's been saving for 20 years. He slides them into a machine at the bank, ready to cash them in for paper bills. And there it is, sitting right on top, a 1995 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, carrying the rare doubling that transforms it from 1 cent to $1 million miracle. But most people never look, and that's exactly why collectors whisper about this coin as if it's a legend. Because its discovery is never expected, it's sudden, shocking, life-changing. Now here's what makes this coin so dangerous to overlook. The doubling is not on every coin. Out of billions minted, only a few escape with this dramatic flaw. But the doubling is bold when you know where to look. The letters Liberty almost appear shadowed, with a ghost-like second strike. The date 1995 carries the same eerie doubling effect, like a coin caught between two realities. But what happened next shocked even the professionals. Grading companies like PCGS and NGC, the gold standards of coin authentication, began receiving submissions of these pennies. Some were worn down, circulated, and only worth hundreds. But others were immaculate, fresh, flawless, untouched. Those examples, graded MS69 and higher, became the holy grail. And when they hit the auction block, collectors went to war. Bidding wars erupted, prices soared, and more than one collector walked away with tears in their eyes after losing a battle for history, over $1.2 million for a single 1995 no-mint mark Lincoln penny in pristine condition. And that's not just money, that's a life-changing fortune for whoever found it. Not all doubling is valuable. Some coins show machine doubling, a mechanical shift during striking, which looks sloppy and flat. Those are almost worthless. The key difference is in the depth. A true double die coin has strong, crisp, distinct lines. You can see it clearly in Lincoln's face, in the word Liberty, and in the date. That's what separates a $1 million miracle from a penny you'd leave in a parking lot. Collectors were stunned when more examples surfaced. Each one was treated like buried treasure, each discovery a reminder that history can hide in the smallest, most ordinary objects, and that's why even today, in 2025, people are hoarding pennies from the 1990s. They're not just saving copper. They're searching for a secret, one that could change their lives forever. 1995, make sure there's no mint mark under the date, which tells you it was struck in Philadelphia. Then, examine the word Liberty and the numbers 1995 under strong light. If you see a clear, bold doubling effect, letters that look doubled, almost like they have a shadow, you might be holding the coin that can bring you a fortune. Check Lincoln's eye as well. On some of the most valuable examples, the doubling makes it appear as if Lincoln has a ghost-like second profile. That eerie detail is one of the most famous markers of the 1995 double die penny. Collectors and dealers know the difference. If it looks flat, blurred, or shallow, it's not the $1 million variety. But if it's sharp, bold, and clear, you might just have struck gold. This coin story is more than money. It's about hope. It's about the thrill of discovery. It's about the idea that something so small, so ordinary, can hold a secret powerful enough to change everything. Think about it. Right now, in your drawer, in your coin jar, or even in your pocket, there could be a 1995 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. To most people, it's worth 1 cent. But to you, it could be worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up in someone's pocket change, forgotten, ignored, maybe even tossed aside. But when one collector took a closer look, what he discovered shook the entire coin world. That ordinary-looking penny was worth nearly $2 million, and tonight, you're going to learn the shocking truth behind the 1981 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that hides one of the greatest treasure secrets in American history. At first glance, it looks like every other penny you've ever spent. The brown copper tone, the profile of Abraham Lincoln, the familiar date, 1981. But buried inside this one year, this one minting, is a mistake so rare, so mysterious, that it transformed an everyday coin into a $1 million miracle. Collectors were stunned when the first discovery surfaced. A man in Ohio was counting through rolls of pennies from the bank. Just routine, something thousands of collectors do every day. But as he slid one coin under the magnifying glass, he froze. His heart raced. The coin in his hand didn't match the others. Something about it was wrong, and yet, it was that tiny wrong detail that made it worth a fortune. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. You see, 1981 was a year of transition for the Lincoln cent. The U.S. Mint was preparing to change the very composition of pennies forever. For more than a century, pennies had been made mostly of copper. But by the early 1980s, copper prices soared. Making a 1-cent coin out of copper suddenly cost more than a cent itself. The mint had to act, and so, in 1982, the penny was reborn as a copper-plated zinc coin, cheaper, lighter, and easier to produce. But in 1981, the last full year of solid copper cents, something happened at the Philadelphia Mint that no one could have predicted. Some of those coins were struck with errors. Misalignments, doubled dies, and striking mistakes slipped through undetected. No mint mark, no fanfare, nothing unusual at first glance. But under careful examination, these errors revealed themselves, and with them, values that skyrocketed into the millions. Dealers scrambled to get their hands on them. Auction houses whispered in disbelief. How could a 1-cent coin, struck just 40-odd years ago, carry a price tag higher than a mansion? The answer lies in the perfect storm of rarity, timing, and collector demand, and this is where the story takes a turn. One of the most valuable 1981 no-mint mark pennies ever found wasn't pulled from a dusty attic or an old collection. It came straight from circulation. Someone, somewhere, paid for their morning coffee with a coin worth more than $1 million, and they didn't even know it. Collectors call this the miracle penny. Because unlike other rare coins locked away in museums or collections, these 1981 errors are still out there, hiding in pocket change, waiting to be discovered. And every day, someone unknowingly spends one, passing a fortune across a counter. But here's what makes the 1981 penny so dangerous: most people miss it. It looks almost identical to an ordinary penny. The same date. The same Lincoln profile. The same memorial reverse. But the clues are there if you know where to look. Some have doubling in the date or lettering, most often in God We Trust or Liberty. Others show a striking misalignment, where Lincoln's bust appears shifted, or details are incomplete. And in the rarest cases, transitional test strikes and planchet errors from the copper to zinc switch slipped into circulation. These are the coins that have shocked the market, coins that routinely sell for tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, and in the rarest conditions, have reached values close to $2 million. Imagine it. One day, you're short on change for the vending machine. You dig into your pocket, and there it is, a penny no one has noticed in 40 years. A penny the world forgot. A penny that could change your life forever. Counterfeits. When collectors learned how much these rare varieties were selling for, forgers rushed to flood the market with fake doubled dies and altered coins. Experts warn, if you think you found one, never clean it, never scratch it, and never trust your own eyes alone. Submit it to a professional grading service. That small step could mean the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth over $1 million. And here's the twist that few people know: some of the rarest 1981 no-mint mark pennies were actually struck with proof-like qualities, coins that shimmer under the light as if they came from a special strike. How did they get into circulation? No one knows. Some say mint employees accidentally released test strikes. Others whisper about intentional leaks. Whatever the truth, those coins are out there waiting for someone bold enough to search every penny they come across. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. Another collector discovered his in a jar of coins his grandfather left behind. And in yet another case, a schoolteacher found one in her classroom change drawer. Ordinary people, extraordinary discoveries. But what makes this story even more unbelievable is this: the clock is ticking. Every day, these coins are lost, destroyed, or overlooked. As time passes, the survivors grow fewer, and their value climbs higher. The chance to find one is still alive, but it won't last forever. Start with the basics. Look for a 1981 penny with no mint mark. Philadelphia struck. Check the lettering carefully under magnification. Doubled dies often show extra thickness in the words Liberty and In God We Trust. Examine the date. Some varieties show dramatic doubling in the 1 or 9. Pay attention to strike quality. Weak or misaligned strikes are often key. And weigh the coin if you can. Authentic 1981 copper pennies weigh about 3.11 grams, while any unusual weight could indicate a transitional error. Most importantly, don't dismiss a penny just because it looks ordinary. Some of the most valuable ones were found in jars, drawers, and piggy banks where they sat untouched for decades. This coin almost ended up forgotten in a coffee can of spare change, yet one example shocked the entire coin collecting world when it crossed the auction block for over $2 million. A penny. A single 1982 no-mint mark Lincoln cent, worth up to $2.1 million. It sounds impossible, doesn't it? After all, millions of pennies were struck in 1982. But hidden among them is a mysterious survivor, a rare transition error that turned an everyday coin into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. But here's where it gets fascinating. 1982 wasn't an ordinary year for the Lincoln penny. That year, the U.S. Mint was in turmoil. Rising copper prices forced them to switch from the traditional solid bronze composition to a cheaper copper-plated zinc planchet. For the first time in history, America's most humble coin wasn't really copper anymore, and in that chaotic changeover, mistakes were made. Collectors believe that a small handful of pennies struck in 1982 slipped through with the wrong metal, the wrong weight, or even subtle design changes that nobody noticed until decades later. And one of those mistakes, a 1982 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, would change a collector's life forever. But here's the chilling part: most people who held one of these coins never knew it. They spent it at the gas station. They dropped it in a jar. They let it vanish back into circulation. And yet, one lucky finder turned pocket change into a fortune, because when his penny was weighed, it wasn't ordinary. It tipped the scale at 3.1 grams, the old bronze weight, when it should have been the lighter zinc. That tiny difference separated a common cent from a multi-million-dollar miracle. But what happened next stunned the coin world. At a major auction, this humble brown penny sat under the spotlight. Bidding started modestly, a few hundred, then a few thousand. But seasoned dealers knew what they were looking at. Hands shot up. Numbers climbed. 10,000. 50,000. 100,000. The room buzzed with disbelief. This wasn't just another penny. This was history, and a mistake the mint never intended the public to see. And when the final hammer fell, the price was jaw-dropping. Over $2 million. For a penny that could have been sitting in anyone's change purse, collectors were shocked. Dealers rushed to examine their own inventories. And suddenly, 1982 pennies weren't just pennies anymore. They were potential life changers. But the story doesn't end there, because 1982 wasn't only about metal. That year, the mint produced 7 different varieties of the Lincoln cent: large date, small date, copper, zinc, Denver mint, Philadelphia no mint mark, a confusing maze of variations. And inside that maze, a single wrong combination can mean the difference between 1 cent and $1 million. Here's what most people miss. On the 1982 no mint mark small date penny, the 2 in the date has a delicate curve, not a strong bold stroke. The 8 sits slightly higher, with a slimmer waistline. These are the clues that separate a worthless penny from one that could shock the world. The weight. If your 1982 no mint mark penny weighs 2.5 grams, it's zinc, and it's ordinary. But if it weighs the heavier 3.1 grams, congratulations. You might just be holding one of the most valuable error coins in American history. But imagine this: a man cleaning out his father's desk drawer finds a handful of old pennies. Most were ordinary. But one had no mint mark, a small date, and the heavier copper weight. He almost tossed it into a jar. But instead, he took a second look. That moment of curiosity became the turning point of his life. That penny, his father's forgotten change, became a 7-figure discovery. And this is where the story becomes truly unbelievable, because if one man's forgotten penny could be worth millions, how many more are still out there? How many are sitting in old coffee cans, piggy banks, dresser drawers, passed over by eyes that never knew what to look for? Collectors whisper that fewer than 20 of these coins may exist. But others believe more are waiting to be found, hidden in plain sight. And every time someone pulls an old 1982 penny from circulation, the question hangs in the air: is this the one? But here's the warning most people overlook: not every heavy 1982 penny is the jackpot. Some weigh more because of damage or debris. Others are misleading counterfeits crafted by greedy hands. That's why authenticating through a trusted grading service is essential. Because the difference between a $2 trinket and a $2 million treasure is absolute certainty. But what keeps collectors awake at night is this: the possibility that the next life-changing coin is still undiscovered. A coin that could be hiding in your pocket right now, this tiny piece of copper and zinc, born in a year of confusion, rejected by millions, dismissed as worthless, has become a symbol of hope. Proof that even the smallest coin can hold the power to rewrite a collector's destiny. So here's what you must do. Tonight, pull out your change jar. Find your 1982 pennies. Look closely at the date. If there's no mint mark beneath the year, study the shape of the numbers. Is it a small date? Does the 2 curve softly? Does the 8 sit narrow and tall? Then weigh it carefully. If it tips the scale at 3.1 grams, don't dismiss it. Hold it like treasure. Because it might just be the one dot, and remember, this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up in a handful of loose change at a gas station, but instead, it stunned the entire coin world by being valued at over $2 million. Imagine pulling a penny from your pocket, a dull, ordinary, copper coin, the kind you wouldn't even bother to bend down and pick up off the street. Now imagine discovering that very coin could pay off your house, your car, and secure your family's future forever. That's the shocking truth about the 1970 D mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin so rare, so mysterious, and so unexpected that collectors today are willing to pay up to $2.2 million just to hold one in their hands. But how can a penny, a coin worth just 1 cent, transform into a life-changing treasure? The answer lies in a mistake. A tiny, hidden error at the Denver Mint in 1970 that would go unnoticed by the public for decades. This mistake created one of the most sought-after rarities in all of American coin collecting history. And if you've ever owned a jar of old pennies, there's a chance one could be sitting there right now. The year 1970 was a time of transition for U.S. coinage. Millions of pennies rolled off the presses, each bearing Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile on the obverse, and the solemn Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. But among those countless coins, a few were struck under the wrong conditions. One batch was made using a doubled die obverse, a flaw in the die itself, where the design was accidentally imprinted twice. This doubling created ghost-like images, barely visible at first glance, but powerful enough to transform the coin's destiny. Collectors who know the signs speak about it with awe. On the 1970 D doubled die penny, you'll see the date itself, the numbers 1970 appear almost as if they're shadowed, doubled against the surface. The letters Liberty and In God We Trust reveal a strange, otherworldly duplication. To the untrained eye, it looks like a blur, but to the collector, it screams treasure. And here's the part that shocked even veteran dealers: when these error coins first surfaced, few believed they could fetch more than a few $100s. But then, something happened that would rewrite the coin's story forever. In a major auction house, one of these pennies appeared under the spotlight. Bidders from across the country, some millionaires themselves, locked in a heated battle. The final hammer price soared into the millions. The room gasped. A single penny had just shattered expectations, reaching a value of $2.2 million, but what happened next stunned even the experts. Collectors everywhere began searching their rolls of pennies, desperate to find one of their own. Suddenly, the most ordinary coin became a symbol of hope, a reminder that miracles could still be hiding in plain sight. Think about that for a moment. You could walk into a grocery store today, pay with cash, and unknowingly hand over a coin worth millions. Or worse, you could toss it into a tip jar, never realizing the fortune you just gave away. That's how powerful and dangerous this secret truly is. The 1970 D penny is more than just an error coin. It's a piece of history born from imperfection, a testament to the idea that greatness sometimes comes from mistakes. And every collector knows the most valuable discoveries are never perfect, they're flawed in just the right way. But here's the real twist: not every 1970 penny with a D mint mark is worth a fortune. Most are common, ordinary cents, barely worth face value. And that's why so many people miss the jackpot. They glance at the date, see the mint mark, and toss it aside, never noticing the secret doubling that makes all the difference. This tiny detail, the doubling on the obverse, is what turns a 1-cent coin into $1 million miracle. Without it, the coin is just another penny. With it, it's one of the rarest treasures in the world. And that's why dealers are racing to secure these coins whenever they appear. The 1970 D doubled die obverse reveals itself in 3 main places. First, look at the date. The numbers 1, 9, 7, and 0 should show a ghostly second impression. Next, study Liberty. The doubling is often most dramatic here, with the letters looking shadowed or almost three-dimensional. Finally, check the motto, In God We Trust. On the error coin, it looks blurred, almost as if the engraver stuttered across the metal, and yet, this is where many hopeful collectors go wrong. Under poor lighting, dust, or scratches, the coin can play tricks on your eyes. Many confuse mechanical doubling, a far more common and worthless error, with the true doubled die. Only the genuine doubled die penny carries the power to reach $2.2 million. Collectors were shocked the first time one was authenticated by a top grading service. That simple copper coin, the kind a child might have carried to buy candy in 1970, suddenly carried more weight than stacks of gold. One man's pocket change became a miracle, the kind of discovery most only dream of, but just when you think you understand the rarity, there's another layer of mystery. Experts believe only a handful of these 1970 doubled die pennies exist in high-grade condition. Some might still be sitting in forgotten jars of coins, locked in attic boxes, or hiding in the back of an old desk drawer. Which means, the story isn't over yet. Picture this. A retired teacher empties a coffee can of pennies saved over decades. She sorts them one by one, unaware that among them lies a fortune. Or a child searching through pocket change stumbles across a coin with strange letters and shows it to a parent. That small moment of curiosity could turn into $1 million windfall. And every day, somewhere in America, that possibility remains. It means that every 1970 penny deserves a second look. Especially those struck in Denver, bearing that D beneath the date. Hold them up to the light. Use a magnifying glass if you must. Because the coin that could change your life might already be in your hands. Dealers are rushing. Collectors are hunting. Auctions are waiting. And yet, the universe may have chosen you, the ordinary person, to find the extraordinary treasure. That's the allure of the 1970 penny. Not all treasures are hidden in the ground. Sometimes, they're hiding in plain sight, in your pocket, waiting to be discovered. The 1970 mint Mark Lincoln penny with a doubled die obverse is proof of that. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but when it resurfaced, it shocked the coin world with a value approaching $1 million. It was small, ordinary, copper red, the kind of penny you'd pass over without a second thought. Yet, buried in its design, hidden in its history, was a secret powerful enough to change a collector's life forever. The 1981 D. Lincoln penny. Minted in Denver, tucked into circulation among billions of others. Most of these pennies are worth just a cent, but not all of them. A few carry flaws, mysteries, and errors so rare that dealers call them miracle coins. And one of them sold for a price that left collectors speechless. But how can a coin struck just before the 1982 transition to zinc be worth a fortune? The answer is buried in the mistakes of the mint, and the razor-thin line between ordinary change and $1 million treasure. Collectors who know what to look for guard these secrets carefully. But tonight, I'm going to reveal them to you, because somewhere, right now, in a drawer, in a jar, or even in your pocket, a 1981 D. Lincoln penny could be waiting to change everything. But first, let's step back. The year was 1981. The Denver Mint was under pressure. The U.S. Treasury was preparing to switch from solid copper to copper-plated zinc. The economy was shifting, inflation was biting, and pennies were costing more to produce than they were worth. Every strike of the die mattered. Every second on those machines counted, and in that rush, errors slipped through die cracks. Off-center strikes. Double dies that gave Lincoln's profile a ghostly shadow. Coins struck on leftover planchets from earlier years. Each mistake, unnoticed at first, would later send shockwaves through the collecting world. 1 penny in particular surfaced decades later at an auction house. To the untrained eye, it looked ordinary. Brownish red, slightly worn, nothing spectacular. But under magnification, experts spotted the truth. A doubled die obverse. Lincoln's features slightly doubled. The date, 1981, etched with a faint second impression. And beneath it all, the D mint mark clear, proud, undeniable. The room fell silent. Dealers leaned forward. Bidders tightened their grips on their paddles. The auctioneer's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. The price climbed higher, higher, until gasps echoed through the crowd. That single penny, a coin once destined for pocket change, now stood at the brink of $1 million hammer price. Collectors were stunned. How could a penny most people wouldn't bend down to pick up become a life-changing fortune? But that's the secret of numismatics. The tiny flaws. The overlooked details. The story's hiding in plain sight, and here's where things get even stranger, because not all 1981 D pennies are alike. Some were struck on the wrong planchet. Imagine a Lincoln penny struck on a dime silver disc. Others show broad strikes, with the design spilling past the rim. A handful even bear off-center impressions so dramatic that Lincoln's face is cut in half, and then there are the transitional errors, coins mistakenly struck on brass or experimental metals. These are the ones that collectors whisper about late at night. These are the ones that spark bidding wars and make millionaires, but what happened next stunned the entire coin world. A man sorting through his late father's collection in Colorado opened a dusty cigar box. Inside were rolls of pennies, most dated 1981. He nearly tossed them aside, until one coin caught the light. The rim looked slightly uneven. The strike, not quite centered. He paused, leaned closer, and realized he might be holding something extraordinary. He submitted the coin for grading. Weeks later, the envelope arrived. His hands trembled as he read the report. Error confirmed. Rare. Almost flawless condition. Estimated value, hundreds of thousands. He had nearly spent it at the grocery store. Imagine that. One man's pocket change becoming $1 million miracle, but here's the part most people miss: the difference between a common penny and a treasure worth millions comes down to details no bigger than a hair's width. The shape of the mint mark. The doubling of a date. A faint crack stretching across the coin like lightning. Even the sound of the metal when it's dropped can reveal its secret. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on high-grade 1981D pennies right now, especially those graded MS65 or higher. Why? Because the market knows that rarity and condition combined can turn an overlooked coin into a jackpot, and the suspense doesn't end there. Some experts believe that more undiscovered 1981D rarities are still out there, hiding in forgotten collections, resting in bankrolls, or buried at the bottom of penny jars. Each one waiting for a sharp-eyed collector to uncover its secret. Think about it. Billions of pennies minted. Countless lost to time. But a handful, just a handful, carrying a hidden error that transforms them into legendary pieces of American history. The hunt never ends. And when it comes to the 1981D penny, the hunt has only just begun. Look closely at the obverse. Study Lincoln's face, his eye, his mouth, his chin. Do you see doubling? Look at the date, 1981. Is there a faint shadow, a second impression? Then check the reverse. Do the lettering and the Lincoln Memorial look doubled or slightly distorted? That's your first clue. An off-center strike could mean the difference between a cent and a fortune. Finally, study the mint mark. That small d can sometimes appear misplaced, doubled, or faintly repunched. If you spot it, you might be looking at a discovery worth hundreds of thousands, and remember, the highest values come from condition. Coins with little wear, strong luster, and sharp detail are the ones that ignite bidding wars. So before you spend another penny, take a second look, because the 1981D Lincoln penny is not just change, it's a mystery, a legend, and for a lucky few, a ticket to a life-changing treasure.